Hi, I'm Millcreek Township Supervisor John Groh. As we all know, winters in northwest Pennsylvania, and especially along the shore of Lake Erie, can be challenging. There are many hazards we face, including driving in the snow, weather advisories, and exposure to extreme cold, and so on. To discuss these topics and many more is Millcreek Township Emergency Management Coordinator Matt Exley. Matt, thanks for being on our show today.
Thanks for having me, John.
I know we have a lot of topics to talk about, and hopefully we can get them all in here in our short time period that we have.
Absolutely.
So let's start out with the fire safety. What can you tell me about that? What do we need to be aware of, especially this time of year as the winter comes around?
So this time of year we have a lot of differences in fire safety. We see different kinds of fires, and one of those is with the holidays. We have a lot of decorations. We have a lot of really nice things that bring us into the season, but we also have a lot of hustle and bustle. So we may not take the steps that we need to make sure that we're fire safe during the season, and therefore we see a big increase in home fires over the wintertime.
Okay. And in what ways would you be talking about specifically? I know, of course, we have the Christmas trees. Of course, that's for a short period of time. What else do we have? We'll talk about Christmas trees more specifically in a second, but what other hazards do we have?
So we have things like heaters, space heaters. We see a lot of space heater fires. We see fires with candles. Candles are a big thing. Particularly the four biggest days for candle type fires are Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, and also New Year's Eve.
Yes.
So those 4 days are the biggest days that we have for candle type fires. In addition to that, of course, we have the Christmas trees, as you mentioned. And even we put a lot more decorations around. So when we put up decorations to make everything feel festive, we don't really think about putting them near heat sources, and that can be a huge cause of concern, as well as all of the cooking that we're doing. The baking and cooking that we're doing for all the holidays.
I love the cookies that we get.
Yes, absolutely.
That's one of my favorite things about the holidays, the cookies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, of course, one of the things that I think that we know, maybe some people don't, are the materials that are used for these decorations. Many of them are polyester based, and they're flammable. They're extremely flammable. So it doesn't take much to get something going.
That's right.
Something near a heater, whether it be an electric element or especially with a flame, the way the polyester breaks down, and the next thing you know, you've got a fire started, a blanket from a couch or something like that. So that's possible. And of course, our fireplace safety. We got to make sure that we keep the embers in, that we have a good hearth there, that we don't have flammables around there, whether it be carpet or anything around that area that can catch fire.
Right, and making sure that our chimneys are inspected every year and that they're clear and clean so that we don't have any chimney fires either.
Right. Now, let's get back to the portable heaters for a second. Of course, myself as a former building code official, I've always said that you shouldn't need to use accessory heating like that, but there are people that still use them.
Right.
And, even in the summertime, there are people that still use those things.
Yes.
They don't like the air conditioning. And those have special warnings on them there, but not everybody pays attention to them. Once again, keeping flammable materials away from there. We don't want things that touch it and could melt. Correct. Those things are toasters when you get right down to it. The electric elements. That's what they are, folks, is a toaster. You got to be careful with that. You don't leave a blanket laying on a toaster. But then there's also the flame ones. I can't remember the brand name of it, but one that has a heat. You put fuel in it and you burn that way there. And of course, you got to be careful about the exhaust on those things. You can't do those things in sleeping rooms, because you don't want to be, passing out from the smells during your sleep.
Correct.
And so on.
Yep. Well, and especially with portable heaters, you're absolutely right. We recommend that you don't use them at all. However, we're also realists, and we understand that they're out.
Yeah, we are.
So some things that you want to look for those are, you want to make sure that if you're going to use one that is 3 feet away, at least 3 feet away, and a complete circle around it for any kind of combustible material or anything that may catch on fire. In addition to that, if you're going to buy one, you may want to make sure that it has a tip switch on it. And what that does is if it gets knocked over by the kids or the dog or the pets, that it goes out. We were on a fire not too long ago. It wasn't with an electric one, it was with a gas one, but it didn't have it wasn't mounted correctly, and the dogs knocked the the heater over face down, and it actually literally burnt a hole straight through the floor into the basement, and the heater was hanging, swinging in the basement when we got there.
Oh,
so
boy. Yeah,
certainly can be some dangers. On top of that are our carbon monoxide dangers for the heaters that you talked about with petrochemical fuel in it as well.
Sure. Yeah, and those are a hazard. Of course, one of the things, and I'm going to say this jokingly, but I mean it seriously, guys, read the directions. If you buy a heating appliance, read the directions. I know we don't do that, but please do it in this time, because you're talking a matter of life or death if you use it the incorrect way. I'm notorious for not reading directions, but there are times when I do.
Yes.
My wife always reminds me, did you read the directions? I'll read them after I get it going.
You're still in the package.
They're in the package somewhere. I don't know where, but anyway, seriously, folks, read the directions, and it'll give you the idea of what you're supposed to do. You're how far away from different things, what you should and should not do. So
absolutely,
that's what the directions are for. So it's hard for me at times, but anyway, moving on. Of course, I think it's obvious about smoke detectors, and how about carbon monoxide detectors? We should have those. Of course, the smoke detectors are required. And,
yep.
Yeah.
So we recommend that you put a smoke detector on at least one on every floor of your house. Preferably, the code calls for one inside and outside every bedroom. But if you can't do that far, at least one on every floor of your house. We look for them to be interconnected. So if the fire begins in the basement and starts to burn, and that smoke detector goes off, you may not hear it on your second floor.
Right.
So it allows all of them to go off at the same time and wake you up. We also recommend for you to do multiple detectors as far as smoke and carbon monoxide if you can.
Okay.
There's a new state law out there actually that requires all rented facilities. So if you're in a rental, whether it's a home or whether it's a multi-residential structure, all residential structures that are rentable have to have a carbon monoxide detector on the same floor as any kind of fuel-fired appliance. So if there's a gas furnace in the basement or hot water tank, you must have a carbon monoxide detector there. You must also have a carbon monoxide detector near any ranges or anything like that. So we've been slowly getting around to all of our landlords, but that's one important thing that the new state law has covered.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, there's a couple more questions about, of course, we're talking about inside fire safety. And just go off just a little bit on a side, back to where we were about Christmas trees. And I think we have a video that we'll be showing here.
We do.
Well, how long, what short time it takes for a fire to start, from a Christmas tree, and how long what little time it takes to have that expanding over and it to spread out to, furniture that's there, carpet, whatever there might be. So we'll be showing that here, and although you and I can't see it right now, what is it, about a minute or so before the tree is totally involved?
Yeah, it's a very short period of time.
Right.
You'll see on the video a small fire begins.
These are real trees we're talking
This is
about.
a real
It's
Christmas
a real
tree,
yeah.
And this is a dry Christmas tree.
Right.
The difference between dry and a well-watered Christmas tree is literally life and death.
Right. Water your Christmas trees.
Yep.
If they're real trees.
This is, if you want to see the difference between a live and a dry Christmas tree, you can go to the NIST. You can Google that and Google NIST Christmas tree, and they actually show you one side by side them burning.
A wet, a moist tree and then a dry tree.
Absolutely. In this video, for example, you can see how in just seconds that tree goes from a small tiny flame to fully involved, and then the room becomes very dark. You can see how quick the living room fills up with smoke and reaches a point where we call flashover. Once that flashover point's reached, everything in that room is on fire, including a person if they're inside.
Right. And something that many people may not be aware of is how flammable their furniture is.
Correct.
And this is the reason why furniture stores are required to be sprinkled under the NFPA and the building codes, because the fire, the toxicity that comes out of the materials that are used, it's very dangerous, is all we can say.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And in fact, the new furniture that's out there is mostly made of plastic fibers and creates hydrogen cyanide to the point where we actually have seen victims and firefighters have cyanide poisoning from smoke from fires, and they have to get an antidote kit for it.
Okay.
So, you're absolutely right. It can be very, very severe.
Okay. Okay, so now, I know this is not a pleasant topic to talk about. Say that my smoke alarms do go off. Tell me I have a fire. Now, I need to get out of my house. do we need to practice how to get out of the house?
We do, and I'll tell you
It's
a
an
personal,
obvious question. I know the
Yep.
answer, but it's important.
I'll tell you a personal story as to why. So
Okay.
I have 4 children,
Yes.
and my children should be the best trained kids in how to get out of a house in the township, right?
We would think.
You would
yes.
hope. They do a very good job when we practice our home escape plan during the day. But
Yeah.
I saw some research on something, and decided to try it, and we had never practiced at night.
Okay.
So I decided to go in one night, and I turned the smoke detector on about 2 o'clock in the morning. My wife was thrilled.
Oh, I bet.
And so put the smoke detector off at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's sitting there beeping. Nobody wakes up.
Oh.
So I walk into my son's room. They share a room, and I walked into there and I still had the smoke detector on. A 17-year-old and a 10-year-old. Nobody wakes up. So I walk into my daughter and my other kids' rooms. They don't wake up either. My 9-year-old daughter pulls her covers up over her head, goes back to sleep. Finally, after 15 minutes of this thing going off, my 17-year-old comes out and wants to know what's going on. The problem is that we do a great job of practicing during the day because it's convenient. But at nighttime, particularly for the elderly and for kids, they enter more of a REM sleep than you and I do because we've got a lot of things on our mind all the time.
Yes.
And so what happens is their brains can't process that beeping because they never hear it at night. So we've discovered that, and through practice, we now do practicing at nighttime, and my kids wake up now. But if you've never done that with your kids, it's imperative to do because you think that they're going to wake up to the smoke detector because that thing is really loud. If they've never practiced at night, chances are they probably
wouldn't even pay attention to
Right.
it. So, oh God, that's a scary thought there. So, folks, do practice that all the time, not just at during the winter time. Practice it, maybe sometime during the summer, but at least know what the occupants of the house, they'll know what that sounds like while they're sleeping.
Yep.
It should wake them up and tell them to get out of the house. is what it
Absolutely.
should be.
Very
So,
scary.
and of course, having that escape plan, you have your door to go out, but also your bedroom window.
Correct.
Which should be big enough for anybody to get out of,
Yep.
or a firefighter to get in too.
Yep.
That's why there's minimum sizes under the building code.
And one of the things that we really want you to put in your escape plan is, you're absolutely right, have your 2 ways out. Once you get out, have a meeting place.
Yes.
When the firefighters pull up, it's very, very important to know that everybody is accounted for.
Yes.
We've had fires. I was involved with one where we had a little boy that we searched for a long time inside this house that was on fire because his parents told us he was missing. He was sitting out on the back swing set. He was out of the fire the entire time, and we put many firemen in danger. Trying
by
to
not
rescue
knowing
him.
that he
Right.
was already out. So get that meeting place of where to get together, and that way everybody's accounted for.
Absolutely.
And of course, never go back into the building. That's what the firefighters do. They
That's
have
right.
the outfits and the oxygen tanks to do that. Okay, well, I think we've talked enough about the interior fire safety. Let's talk about winter driving safety. Maybe just start out with the easiest one of all: fire hydrants.
Yes, fire hydrants.
Okay. What is the policy, or is there a regulation about fire hydrants that we need to know about?
Yep. So and many people may not like to hear this, but the firefighters, as we know, require the availability to get to fire hydrants. Many of those in the wintertime can be covered with snow very easily. Plow trucks come through and plow them in, or we get heavy snow. And it's the property owner's responsibility for where that hydrant is to be able to open that up and keep that clear. The same way as if you decided to put in shrubs around a fire hydrant, we wouldn't allow that either.
Right.
We must maintain a 3-foot clearance around there. We ask everybody during the winter, you may have a fire hydrant on an elderly person's property or whatnot, and you know that they can't get out there and dig through that snow. So go out there, take responsibility for your neighborhood and help, because if your house catches on fire, that's the fire hydrant they're going to go to, even if it's not in your front yard.
Right.
So
it could be a couple hundred feet down the street there. And
Absolutely.
They're going to tap a 4-inch hose on that and run it up to your property. So.
And we have a good graphic here that shows you exactly how you need to dig around your fire hydrant.
Right.
And we ask you to do that.
Yeah, that was actually my next question there. And of course, with the diameter of the hose that's being put onto the fire hydrant, that it's not real flexible.
It is not.
Especially when you put pressure on that.
Yep.
it has a tendency to want to straighten out. So we have to make sure that it's a big area around the fire hydrant, almost to the point where there's no snow at all around there,
Yep.
for probably a good 5 to 6 feet or more than that around it.
Yeah, and actually we recommend 3 feet on every side, so you hit the nail on the head. If you draw a circle the entire way around there, it's 6 feet the entire way across. So 3 feet's kind of our magic number with heaters and fire hydrants and everything.
Right. Yeah. That makes good sense on it. Like I said, knowing the size of the fire hoses, why there's that little flexibility in it. So, okay, let's talk about driving a little bit. First of all, if I'm going to go out driving in the wintertime, what should I have in my car? Let's start with that.
Well, there's a lot of good things that you can have in your car. You want to have the normal things that you would think about when you're going out on a trip. Things like jumper cables, maybe some flares or reflective triangles in case you get into trouble. You want to have an ice scraper, even maybe just one that's not attached to the brush. Sometimes those can get a little brittle in the cold weather. Have your car cell phone charger. We're all connected via cell phones nowadays.
That's right.
And something you may not think about is throw a bag of cat litter into the back of your car so that if you get on an icy spot, you can get some traction underneath.
Right.
And then we also, in addition to that kind of kit that you have with you, make sure that you check your vehicle over before you go out.
Sure.
A day like one of our typical winter days here in Erie, you don't want to be caught out on the interstate with a broken down car, that's for sure.
That is for sure, yep. So.
And then we ask you to check, make sure that you're ready to go out beforehand. Go to PA 511 and you can actually see what the roadways are doing. You can actually see where all the state plow trucks are real time and where they've been.
This is a website?
Yep.
Or is there an app that we can download on our phone?
You can download that on your phone too.
PA 511?
PA 511. And if you just Google that or you download it to your phone, we can probably throw up the website address here as well. But you can see where the plows have been. You can see the roadway conditions. You can even view cameras on some of selected of the state roads to see how bad it is out there. And if it's getting bad, make sure that you stay in for a little while.
Well, it's staying with the storm kit, that concept there, and that whole thing, which is great. Keep a blanket in there, I think you mentioned. How about a little bit of food? Something to eat, maybe a can of peanuts or something, just in case.
Something non-perishable.
Water, something that's non-perishable. It's a matter of survival, and you want something. It's pretty got like a high protein, a high fat in it, just in case you're going to be out there for a while. You don't want to be starving to death out there too.
And even with the water, even if it does freeze in your car, if you buy a little plastic bottle of water, you can always throw that up onto the dash and let it thaw out a little bit. And you at least have some water throughout if you become stranded. And if you do become stranded, make sure that you keep an eye on your fuel. You always want to travel with no less than half a fuel tank is my rule.
Yes.
And make sure that if you do get stranded in the snow, that you always have your tailpipe uncovered, because that can certainly back up carbon monoxide in your car.
Oh, that's for sure. Then people end up getting carbon monoxide poisoning and then could end up with serious problems, if not death.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so of course we have to use a lot of common sense. I mean, that's common sense comment right there. We have to use common sense. Checking the weather conditions. Travel. Sometimes you're going to be challenged. Say, okay, do I really need to go take this trip? Do I need to go to Buffalo today? Is there something, can it be put off, for another day? So use some good judgment and know what the other, what your travel plans, what they include, what you might encounter. That's always important. Of course, now that moving on into the storm advisories, we hear all these things. We get the crawlers across the bottom of the screen. I hate to say it, I have a lot of good friends in the media. I tend not to pay attention to those things because there's so many of those little crawlers across the bottom of the screen, like, oh God, now what? Because I'm looking for the NFL scores is what I'm looking for. I'm not looking at the weather advisories. So.
Well, and that's something the National Weather Service kind of took a look at, was there were so many different kinds of things out there that many people were getting confused on what they actually meant.
Right.
So they actually did a hazard simplification project this year, and they took all this large amount of watches and warnings and kind of condensed them into one. So something that you're going to hear that's a little bit unusual this year is you may not hear the typical winter storm warning, winter storm advisory, winter storm watch, lake effect snow advisory. There's all these different ones out there. You're not consolidating them down to like one. And basically what the idea is if you see that you have a winter storm warning that you need to turn to local media or to the National Weather Service and see what the details of that are.
Right.
And it kind of draws your attention to it a little bit more.
Well, and I'll say, maybe I've got this kind of a strange attitude about those weather advisories. Looking at, when you see the crawler across the bottom of the screen, I'm thinking, okay, it's Erie, it's winter, so what?
Right.
I mean, I hate to be so nonchalant about it.
You need to be
and I think I might represent a lot of people out there by saying that.
Sure.
But I also have to be cognizant of that. Maybe there is a special advisory I need to know about on that.
Yep.
And
they're testing a new advisory that I'm actually, I hope we're able to get, and I'm not quite sure why Erie wasn't one of the ones selected to test
we're always a test market for other things.
Yeah. For some reason, they're testing it in State College, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo. But the new warning is a snow squall warning.
Oh.
As you know, that if we get steady snow, that's not a big deal. We live in Erie. That's normal.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden the winds are going to pick up and the visibility is going to drop to zero, they're looking at issuing this very short-term snow squall warning and says, hey, look, for this next half hour, you want to stay off the roads because it's really bad out there.
Okay. And will they be site specific or area specific when they say that?
They will. They're going to, at least the test market is that they're going to do it in the same format that they do the tornado warnings, where now the entire county isn't warned for it. The very specific area, the polygon is
Okay.
is
And of
warned
course,
for
with
it.
our recent tornado that we experienced here last week, there was a specific area where it was being tracked at.
Correct.
So the same thing can happen with the snow squalls.
Yep.
Okay, well that's a good thing. That way we'll know where these belts of snow are coming from and where they're going.
Yep.
And that also can help you with your travel plans. You can say, wait, I'm going to wait for that snow squall to go by, wait for the snow plows to clear it out, then I'll go. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, okay, let's see here. It's of course we've talked about the driving and stuff in the snow, our safety kit that we have in the car. Anything else we need to know about?
Well, we also recommend, you mentioned the recent tornado that we had. We recommend that you put together a kit for your home, too.
Okay.
We may have power outages during the winter. Ironically, November is one of our highest months for tornadoes in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And people don't know that. So November, December, we've had tornado warnings in December before. So you want to be prepared for kind of all hazards. And a lot of people talk to me about kits and they're like, I don't have the extra money to buy a kit and put all these things in it. So what my wife and I did to build our kit was every single time we'd go to the store, we'd maybe pick up 2 or 3 extra canned goods. And yeah, it took us 6 months to get our kit together, but in the end, we spent very little money out of our normal budget. But in the end, we have a pretty good kit that if something happens, you want to be self-sufficient for 72 hours. Our recent tornado is a prime example of that. Our streets department did a fantastic job getting those streets open, but for a period of about 24 hours, there was no north-south movement throughout that area of the township. So you may be on your own for a little bit of time till resources can get to you.
I remember a few years back, and this was, I think, in February or maybe early March, we had an ice storm, and it knocked out power for a couple days.
Yep.
And the importance of a little stove, and of course you use the stove outside, a little Coleman stove. You don't do that inside, but how we're able to cook using that. And, granted, when I go camping, that's what I use, but it's nice to have that handy for the wintertime use. So
you don't have to dig it out of your shed.
Right, yeah. Keep it out there. Your snow shovel, keep it by your door. That way you can get out your door. Keep your snow brush in your car. All those things that you need to clear away the snow that we always get here in Erie in the winter time.
Absolutely.
Matt, we've got about 1.5 minutes left in our program. Anything that I didn't bring up or we haven't talked about that you may think about here now?
No, I don't think so. We've covered a lot of information. Our best thing is to develop a plan for your family that covers really any kind of emergency, and you'll be set.
I think people are smart, and I think that they will use good judgment and do the right thing to protect themselves and their family. And I think that we have that capability, that power to do that. And I just want to make sure everybody here in Millcreek and everybody watching this show actually be safe out there as always, whether it's the winter, summer, spring, it doesn't matter when it is. Be safe in whatever you do, whether it's in your house or whether you're on the road there. So I think with all of that, I think we're going to wrap up our show.
Sounds great.
Thanks for being on the show there, Matt. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, for all of you out there, thank you for watching our program today. Please be safe whether you're in your home or out in the street. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter if it's winter, summer, or spring. It doesn't matter. be safe as always. Use good judgment. Thanks for watching our show today.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.